Please go to finneganswakenotes.net for a full explanation of the text, and please don't forget to hit the like button.
Welcome to episode 36 of the Reading Finnegans Wake in 200 Sessions podcast, where we analyze Finnegans Wake by James Joyce 3 pages at a time. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment to support us. Okay, so thank you for trusting us with this next deep dive. We're venturing into what has to be one of the most, notoriously dense pieces of textual analysis maybe ever written, James Joyce's Finnegans Wake, and we're specifically looking at pages 119, line 10, through to 123, line 10. It's all about the infamous letter.
That's right. And this section, it's really pivotal. It's not just, looking at a letter someone found. It's more like a cryptographic blueprint for the whole book. Joyce is using everything here: paleography, history, linguistics, puns.
Everything but the kitchen sink.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
To dissect this letter. And doing that actually reveals the core family stuff, the hidden histories, even the structure of the wake itself.
Exactly. So we're kind of decoding the decoder, using Joyce's own commentary to figure out his methods, his chaos. And the amazing thing, the really standout feature here, is how it's this massive, detailed parody of how scholars analyze, the greatest Irish manuscript, the Book of Kells.
A brilliant move.
So yeah, a lot of ground to cover, countless layers. Let's just dive in, unpack this, starting right at the beginning of this section, 119.10, which really sets the tone, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That mix of high-flown language and something else. Okay, so it kicks off immediately with this really specific, maybe slightly off-putting tone. Heavy alliteration, loads of puns with that farm froze foul flair for that flay fell fox fetter.
Yeah, and what jumps out right away is how it blends things. You've got farm frau pulling in the German Frau for woman, then flair, the French word for, a distinctive smell or style.
But here it's foul flair.
Exactly, a foul smell. And flay fell fox fetter, the stink of a fox, but it's deeper than just a bad smell. There's an old French idiom, escocher le renard.
To flay the fox.
Literally, yes. But colloquially, it meant to vomit, usually, after drinking too much. So right from the first line, Joyce is using this high-level linguistic juggling German, French, English puns to talk about something really basic and kind of gross: being drunk and throwing up.
It sets us up perfectly for what's coming then, this constant mix of the academic and the earthy.
Absolutely. High art, low body humor. And that duality, it's immediately reinforced when he starts comparing the manuscript, the letter, to the Book of Kells. The lines that follow about the indignant whiply plashes and splashes of mire, prudently bolted or blocked rounds.
This lifted straight from Sir Edward Sullivan, right? His analysis of Kells.
Directly. It's a sustained parody. Joyce takes the extremely elevated, almost worshipful language Sullivan used for Kells. It's baffling intricacy, it's unwavering sweep, it's weird and commanding beauty, and he applies it deadpan to this messy, found letter, maybe even urine-stained, as the rumor goes.
So he's doing two things at once: elevating his own messy book to the level of this national treasure and poking fun at how seriously scholars treat these things.
Precisely. And he specifically seems to be thinking of the Tunc page in Kells, that famous initial Tunc's Latin for then, which starts the bit about the crucifixion. Then they crucified Christ with two thieves. It's like this chaotic letter is the modern equivalent of that sacred, complex page. The modern crucifixion, maybe.
Wow, okay. And within all this description of the writing style, we get the first big clue: HCE's initial, the meant-to-be baffling Chrismon trilithon sign.
Yeah, and that single symbol, it's like HCE himself compressed. A Chrismon, that's the Chi-Rho, the P crossed with an X, the monogram for Christ, so the sacred, the Christian layer of Ireland.
Yeah.
But it's crossed with a trilithon. Now, a trilithon is prehistoric. Think megaliths, 3 big stones, like at Stonehenge or Baalbek. It's pagan, ancient, rooted in the earth. Primal, exactly. And crucially, the text tells us to read this trilithon as an E turned 90 degrees clockwise for Earwicker, HCE.
So he's Christ and this ancient stone structure, both at once.
That's the core contradiction. Sacred and pagan, civilized and earthy. It defines him, and it sets up the whole tension of the book right there in that one initial.
It really does. The spiritual versus the dirt.
And the analysis immediately moves on, contrasting the sort of masculine monumental sign with its female counterpart. #tag2, decoding Sigla, history, and linguistic splits. 119.18, 120.02.
Right, so after setting up HCE's complex nature, it pivots straight to ALP, his wife, His sign, the text says, if you move it contrawatchwise, is his title. But then it shifts to the smaller old font they call following a certain change of state of grace of nature alp or delta when single stands for or tautologically stands beside the consort.
Okay, the smaller delta. Mathematically, it means change, right? And that's ALP's role perfectly. She's the principle of transformation in the book. And delta also connects to alp, the source.
Plus delta is the fourth letter, alpha, beta, gamma, delta.
Good point. And that word fontly, it's brilliant. It connects her to baptism, that change of state of grace, but also physically to the font, the source of the river Liffey, which is her symbol.
Huh?
She's the river, the life giver, the maternal force, always flowing, changing, washing away HCE's messes, basically.
Yeah.
The text says she stands beside him. She's the necessary other half to his contradictory nature.
From the couple symbols, then, it jumps into time itself. These really cryptic dates, 1st, 5th, 4th of the 2nd, 8th, 12th, and then weaving in Chinese dating systems. Shang, Hong Kong San Shino, mixed with these huge Irish numbers, 432 and 1132.
Yeah, this bit gets incredibly dense. These numbers, they're like the historical DNA of the wake. 432 is often linked to cosmic cycles, but also locally to the inn, HCE's place. But 1132, that's the really loaded one.
Why 1132?
Historically, it marks the start of Dermot McMurrough's reign. He's the guy, infamous really, whose actions led directly to the Norman invasion of Ireland in 1169.
Okay, a major turning point.
A catastrophe, really. And 1132 is also linked to the burning of St. Bridget's Cathedral and supposedly the rape of the abbess there. So Joyce takes this massive national trauma conquest violation and uses it as the historical backdrop for the Earwicker family's private, maybe embarrassing little scandal, HCE's alleged crime in the park.
So the big historical event becomes a frame for the small domestic one.
Exactly. He maps one onto the other. And even more specifically, the sequence 1132 acts like a code for the family itself.
How so?
Well, think. First one is HCE. The second one is ALP. The 3 represents the twins, Shem and Sean, often acting as one unit or maybe a trinity of aspects. Sean's authority, Shem's art, their combined youth. And the 2. That's Issy, the daughter, plus her reflection, her alter ego. The whole family's right there in those digits.
That's incredible. Okay, so the text then defines some of these symbols, these sigla. The first number, 432, is linked to a village inn, and the second, 1132, or the delta, is an upside-down bridge.
Right. The inn, often drawn like a house, a square with a triangle roof, that's HCE, stable structure. The upside-down delta, the arch of a bridge, reflected maybe in water, that's ALP, movement, change, the river.
And it keeps going. Defining others.
Yes, it lays out the main cast. The multiplication sign, X, stands for the four masters, the analysts, but also the crossroads where things happen, where Sean gets interrogated. Then there's a pot hook or a gibbet sign, that's Sean. The hangman, the policeman, the law and order son.
The good son.
Sort of, yeah. The
Yeah.
morally upright one, at least on the surface. And then crucially, there's the one side missing symbol, often read as Shem, the artist, the exile. The one who's not all there, maybe leading down a dead end.
It's amazing how much character he packs into just a mark on the page. And after this symbolic key, we get that famous bit about the alphabet itself being confused. The P's with their caps awry are quite as often as not taken for Q's with their tails in their oar.
Ah, yes, this is pure Joyce, layers upon layers. On the most basic level, yeah, it's about literal printing errors. P and Q are mirror images. A sloppy typesetter could easily mix them up.
And it sounds like pub talk too, right? Mind your pints and quarts.
Exactly. That's the immediate low-level pun. Mind your P's and Q's becomes mind your pints and quarts. Classic pub argument stuff.
But there's a much deeper historical linguistic thing going on here too, isn't there? The P-Celtic, Q-Celtic split.
Absolutely. That's the profound layer. This split is fundamental to the history of languages in Britain and Ireland. P-Celtic languages, like Welsh, turned the original Proto-Celtic K sound into a P. Q-Celtic languages, like Irish Gaelic, kept it as a C or K sound. So, by referencing this simple PQ confusion in typesetting, Joyce is suggesting that the letter itself, the very language it's written in, is fractured by this ancient linguistic divide. The alphabet itself is split, reflecting the never-ending divisions within Ireland and maybe within the Earwicker family too. Communication itself is inherently flawed, divided, #3 typographical errors, analysis, and the ideal reader, 120.03, 120.20.
So despite all this complexity, the commentator, the scholiast, immediately criticizes the letter for not being simple enough. It talks about the curt, Witty-Watty dashes never quite just right at the trim, trite truth letter.
Right. It hints at that search for emeth, the Hebrew word for truth. The idea here is that the letter, and maybe Joyce's own writing style, is too clever for its own good. Too full of these witty dashes, these flourishes to just state the plain truth.
Like the writer is showing off.
Exactly. It's a criticism of the artist figure, maybe Shem, whose brilliance gets in the way of clear communication. And of course, it echoes how critics received Finnegans Wake itself, often dismissed as just, overly complicated, deliberately obscure, lacking basic sense.
And then comes that amazing description of the text's physical nature. It's very like a whale's egg farced with pemmican, and it's doomed to be nuzzled over a full trillion times forever and a night till his noodles sink or swim by that ideal reader suffering from an ideal insomnia.
Yeah, this is maybe Joyce's most direct statement about what he expects from you, the reader. First, that image, a whale's egg. Impossible, right? Whales are mammals. So immediate absurdity, chaos.
But stuffed with pemmican.
That's the key. Pemmican is this super condensed, high-energy food, survival rations. So the text itself is like that incredibly dense, packed, requiring endless rereading, a full trillion times.
That's quite a commitment. And this reading has to be done by an ideal reader suffering from an ideal insomnia. What does that even mean?
Well, it's a huge demand, but Joyce seems serious. He's likely referencing some French literary theory here, the idea that truly connecting with a magic writer requires the reader to be in a special state, perpetually awake, an ideal insomnia.
So not just reading it before bed.
Not at all. It suggests you need to approach the wake in a different state of consciousness outside of normal, rational daytime thinking. Maybe in that blurry state between waking and sleeping, which mirrors the book's own nighttime setting. He's demanding total obsessive devotion.
And adding to this feeling of a scholarly nightmare, the letter itself is supposedly covered in corrections and marks. All those red-rattled oboli cayenne pepper cast over the text, calling unnecessary attention to errors.
Right, the oboli. These are real things, critical marks like daggers or division signs that ancient scholars use, especially in Alexandria, to flag passages they thought were wrong or added later or just doubtful.
But Joyce is making fun of it here.
Totally. He's satirizing the whole process. The joke is, the commentator is finding errors in a document that's already fictional and possibly meaningless to begin with. And the text itself, as printed in the Wake, doesn't even have these red marks. The commentator is probably imagining them, projecting his own scholarly anxieties onto the page.
So the analysis itself introduces flaws.
That's the point. Scholarly analysis, instead of clarifying, just adds more layers of confusion, more unnecessary attention to errors. It's self-defeating.
And what about those weird Greek letters? Those supercilious-looking crisscross Greek is awkward like perched there and here out of date, like sick owls hawked back to Athens.
Yeah, the scholars showing off again. Using a Greek epsilon, the ia, sometimes with a little hat on it, a circumflex accent, was seen as a sign of, classical learning. Maybe a bit pretentious.
Supercilious looking, like it looks down its nose at you.
Exactly, and that's a pun too. Supercilium is Latin for eyebrow, which is what the circumflex looks like. So the letter literally looks snooty. And the phrase carrying owls to Athens, that was the ancient Greek equivalent of carrying coals to Newcastle.
Doing something pointless.
Utterly superfluous. Athens was famous for its owls. They didn't need more. So these Greek letters are just useless, pretentious clutter. Like maybe Leopold Bloom and Ulysses trying to sound fancy. Hashtag a V. Anthropomorphized letters and writing styles, 120.21, 121.15.
Okay, so now the actual letters start to become characters acting things out. The letter G is described as Jesuistically formed at first, but afterwards genuflected agrally towards the Occident.
Yeah, this one points straight at Joyce himself, JJ. He was Jesuit educated, right? So Jesuistically formed. And the shape of a G, especially a cursive one, can look like it's kneeling or bowing, genuflecting.
But it bows the wrong way, towards the West, the Occident.
Exactly. Traditionally, you'd face east, towards the altar, to genuflect. So turning agrily towards the west suggests a rejection, a turning away from that Jesuit upbringing, from Ireland, from the church. It mirrors Joyce's own exile. The letter itself is acting out his internal conflict.
And then whoosh, we swing right back to the bodily functions. Moving from the Jesuit G to Ostrogothic hagiography, affected for certain phrases of Etruscan stable talk, which leads to the thrown open W's.
Right, cacography. It means bad writing, but it definitely carries the echo of kakos, Greek for bad, or, well, crappy, so shit writing. And stable talk reinforces the low, earthy context.
And the thrown open W's.
The W. That's one of the book's great visual gags. A cursive W, particularly from that era, can look a lot like someone sitting on a toilet, a throne that's thrown open.
But I see it now.
And the text confirms it immediately, talking about nature at her naturalist, mentioning the lu, the p hole, words like cons, quartz. The letter W becomes a symbol of just, basic bodily functions, maybe linking back to that idea of the letter being stained or having a low origin.
This sounds like Shem the penman style, right?
Right.
Writing with his own homemade dubious ink.
Absolutely. It's pure Shem. And right after this very grounded W, we get the complete opposite, the restless, agitated F, the fretful fidget F, the hornful dagamma of your Bornabarbar, which stalks all over the page.
The F sounds aggressive. Why is it Bornabarbar?
Okay, the F shape relates to the Greek letter dagamma. It was an early Greek letter that kind of vanished from the classical alphabet. So it's the outsider, the linguistic barbarian.
And hornful.
Could suggest the shape, or maybe something more sexual, linked to the heterosexual and the implied F word. And the visual part is key. The text says it stalks all over the page. The sources suggest this might be because the letter F appears in bold print in the Wake text here. One theory is that the original letter was on thin tracing paper, and the ink from F's written on the back bled through, creating these bold ghost images.
So they look like they're intruding, stalking the page, like a revision mark?
Exactly like a revise mark, which often look like an F used for insertions. It's chaos literally bleeding through the paper.
Okay, and this leads us to maybe the most crucial bit of paleography for understanding how to actually read the Wake. The curious warning sign before our proto-parents' ipsissima averba, which paleographers call a leak in the thatch, or the erunman in pervis, through the hole of his hat.
Yes, this is huge. This isn't just Joyce making stuff up. That sign, sometimes drawn like a stretched C or two dots with a curve, is a real thing found in early Irish manuscripts.
What did it mean in those old manuscripts?
It had names like head under the wing or turn under the path, and its function was very specific. It told the scribe or reader that the words written immediately after the sign should actually be read after the next full line of text. It basically allowed you to jump ahead and loop back.
So it's an instruction to read out of order.
Precisely. It allows the text to be taken, as Joyce puts it, in any order desired. He's using a genuine historical device from Irish scribal tradition to authorize the very nonlinear, confusing, looping way Finnegans Wake itself works.
He's giving us the key. This ancient sign legitimizes the whole reading experience.
Absolutely. He calls it a leak in the thatch, a way through the structure. It's an instruction to, as he says, keen again and begin again to make sound sense and sense sound kin again. It validates the cyclical, fragmented reading that the book demands. It's the architectural blueprint, hidden in plain sight. #V serpentines, scoliasts, and the R of war. 1.1.1 synth, 122.1 time.
Following that crucial sign, the analysis moves to the letter S, describing that strange exotic serpentine since so properly banished from our scripture.
Right, the Serpentina S. If you look at the Book of Kells, those elaborate, winding, snake-like forms are everywhere in the decoration. They're beautiful, but they also hint at, pre-Christian snake worship, Ophidian cults.
Which St. Patrick supposedly banished, driving the snakes out of Ireland.
Exactly. That's the myth Christianity suppressing the pagan past, the snake. So the S represents that banished, perhaps dangerous element.
And the text says seeing it now is as weird as seeing a right-headed lady white don a cork horse. What's that about?
The cork horse links to the nursery rhyme Ride a Cock Horse, which often has hidden sexual meanings, phallic imagery.
Yeah.
So the comparison suggests that seeing the Serpentine S resurface is like seeing a proper, refined lady engage in something primitive or sexually uninhibited.
The repressed returning.
Pretty much. And the description of the S itself is very sensual. It seems to uncoil spirally and swell lacertina lazily before our eyes. Lacertine means lizard-like, so it's a snake or lizard energy, a kind of latent, powerful sexuality, maybe female sexuality emerging from the script. Another contrast with HCE's rigidity.
Then we get this brilliant kind of self-mocking bit about the whole scholarly process. The text mentions the gypsy mating of a grand, stylish grave digging with second-best buns and interpolation. These munchables occur only in the Butherbrav family of MSS.
Yeah, this is pure meta-commentary. It's Joyce showing how unreliable the commentator, the scholiast, really is. It references Hamlet, funeral baked meats, coldly furnishing the marriage tables, mixing death and life.
But the joke is about buns.
The joke, according to scholars who've unpacked this, is that the commentator himself is just plain hungry. He hears a dead man's toller, maybe a bell tolling for a funeral or a type of baker, and mishears it as a muffin bell, like a bell calling people for tea and muffins.
Because he wants tea.
Exactly. His own hunger makes him mess with the text. He interpolates, adds something that wasn't there, changing the original word, probably cakes associated with funerals, into buns, everyday munchables. It's labeled as only appearing in one specific, probably fictional manuscript family, the Buther maybe suggesting bother or broth.
So the expert commentator is actually corrupting the text because his stomach's rumbling.
That's the implication. It demolishes the idea of scholarly objectivity. The truth of the text isn't fixed. It changes based on the reader's own state, their hunger, their biases, their desires. The letter becomes a mirror reflecting whoever's looking at it.
And then, bam, another bit of major history dropped in. Full up MDCXC, that's 1690.
Right. The Battle of the Boyne, a huge divisive moment in Irish history, just jammed into this discussion of manuscript errors and snacks. Joyce constantly collapses time. The cosmic, the historical, the domestic, they all coexist, even in handwriting analysis.
Then comes this strangely intimate, almost creepy detail about the 4 shortened ampersands under which we can glimpse at and feel for ourselves across all those rush years, the warm, soft, short pants of the quick scribbler.
Yeah, ampersands are literally a quick way to write and, so it suggests speed, haste, the quick scribbler, maybe panting from the effort, hence rush years.
But feeling their pants.
Well, that's the weirdly intimate part. There's a slang interpretation where the ampersand symbol itself looks a bit like posteriors. Buttocks.
Seriously?
Seems so. So Joyce is playing with that idea, the intense connection between writer and reader. You get so close to the text, you can almost physically feel the writer, their warm, soft, short pants. It collapses the distance, makes the act of reading this very intimate, maybe slightly inappropriate encounter with the past writer.
Wow. Okay, and finally, in this section, the focus shifts to the letter R, and things get aggressive.
Those R's, all bellical. The high priest's hieroglyph of kettle tom and oddsbones.
Yeah, the R's sound like pirates. And bellical points straight to war Ars Bellica, the art of war. Kettle tom and oddsbones is pretty clearly skull and crossbones.
The pirate. Right, and this immediately throws us into a scene of conflict, gambling, chance. It's often read as depicting a card game, maybe the Irish game Spoil 5. The whole passage suddenly fills with red, ruby, ready, rouge, blood. There's a mention of a real historical fire at Rose Distillery, maybe figures like William Rufus, the red-faced king. The letter analysis transforms into this chaotic battlefield or gambling den, a perfect image for the Earwicker family dynamics. #tag 6, the cruciform conclusion and the battle of the sexes, 122.60, 123.0.
So we come towards the end of this analysis, and it loops back to the Book of Kells again, with the cruciform postscript from which 3 beige or shorter and smaller oscula have been over-carefully scraped away, plainly inspiring the tenebrous Tunc page of the Book of Kells.
Exactly, full circle. The postscript is shaped like a cross, made of maybe 4 kisses, X marks. This directly echoes the Tunc page in Kells, which has that big cruciform XPI monogram for Christ.
And the scraping away of kisses.
3 kisses removed. The Tunc page also has these little panels in the margins, packed with figures, almost overcrowded. So the idea connects to that proverb, 2's company, 3's a crowd. The third element, the third kiss, is too much. It's awkward, darkly spoken of. It brings the sacred crucifixion imagery right down to messy human relationships, the eternal triangle of HCE, ALP, and whoever the other is.
And it uses specific Latin words for kisses, beigia and oscula.
Right. Beigia are passionate kisses, lovers' kisses. Oscula are more like friendly kisses, maybe on the cheek. So there's a hierarchy of intimacy here that someone tried to erase, over-carefully scraped away.
Suggesting they were hiding something.
Probably. The text even suggests that maybe the last remaining kiss, the one not scraped away, could be read as a suavium, a really deep, intimate lover's kiss, especially if the writer had their tongue in his, or perhaps her, cheek. That final phrase throws in ambiguity about the writer's gender and their real intention. Was the scraping away a cover-up?
The handwriting itself gets a final judgment, too. The fatal drooped windle slope of the blamed scrawl, a sure sign of imperfectible moral blindness.
Yeah, graphology handwriting analysis comes in here. A downward slope in writing is supposed to indicate struggle, depression, maybe being doomed by fate. Imperfectible moral blindness is a harsh judgment on the writer's character, often associated with Issy, suggesting she's flawed and can't be corrected.
It also mentions too many M's and spelling God with a D.
Right. The fartuminess of all those four-legged M's might link back to the Four Masters, the chroniclers. And spelling God with a D connects to dia, the Irish word for God. More signs of the writing being chaotic, maybe flawed, non-standard, ethically compromised even.
And the absolute final flourish is the signature. The Penelopean patience of its last paraphy, a colophon of no fewer than 732 strokes.
Okay, that number 732 is famously the exact number of pages in the first edition of Ulysses.
Ah, so connects directly back to his previous book.
Directly.
Right.
And specifically to Molly Bloom's monologue, the Penelope section, which embodies that idea of female endurance, waiting. Penelopean patience. But then the very last sentence sums up the whole gender battle we've seen playing out in the handwriting analysis.
What does it say?
It contrasts the vaulting feminine libido of those interbranching ogum sex up and in sweeps with how they are sternly controlled and easily repersuaded by the uniform matter-of-factness of a meandering male fist.
Wow, so the feminine writing is wild, sexual, like ogum script, but spiraling upwards.
Exactly. Ogum is that ancient Irish script, usually vertical lines. Here it's interbranching, up and in sweeps, full of libido, chaotic energy, but it's being controlled, pushed back by the uniform matter-of-factness of the male handwriting, the meandering male fist.
Linear versus spiral. Control versus chaos.
That's the ultimate conflict revealed through the handwriting. The whole elaborate analysis of calligraphy, history, dating, it all boils down to this fundamental battle between the feminine principle, chaotic, flowing, sexual, and the masculine, linear, controlling, prosaic.
So these 4 pages, they're like a microcosm of the entire wake. Decoding the writing style really is decoding the book's core conflicts, its family dynamics, its whole universe.
It absolutely is. Joyce uses the tools of scholarship, paleography things meant to create clarity and order, and he uses them to demonstrate profound confusion, duality, and conflict. The letter isn't one stable thing, it's a battleground. High art versus low life, male versus female, past versus present.
It really does give you a kind of shortcut, doesn't it? A way into understanding the Joycean method through this intense focus on just the surface of the writing.
Definitely. But it also leaves us with a pretty big question, I think. If the text itself tells us to read it in any order desired, and if the scholars analyzing it are, mishearing things because they're hungry,
Right.
then how much of the meaning we find in a text like this, or maybe any great work, is actually there in the author's intention, and how much is just a reflection of our own hungers, our own anxieties, our own need to find order in the chaos?
That is a great thought to chew on. Something to keep in mind as you, the listener, continue your own journey through Finnegans Wake. Until next time, keep digging.